Hi, design thinkers. I wanted to give you a quick note about prototyping and set the stage for our work in the develop and deliver side of Norman's Double Diamond. Essentially, for me, I feel like this double diamond, the second diamond of the double diamond, is where a lot of teacher practice lives. This is the ongoing iteration on practice that occurs each and every lesson, within lessons, between days, and even years in the practice of a teacher. I know you've experienced that in your third practicum. When you get a chance to get in front of students and try out whatever it may be that you're doing, is whatever you're asking students to do, you're constantly getting feedback about that, thinking about what that means for your next steps in practice, think about what you might do differently, what they need. That iterative process is quite intuitive to teachers. I find that I circle around and around in this space. As I do that, I try to also intentionally recurse back to defining insights about the problem. So how do I, as I'm circling in this space, I don't come back and necessarily create new problems, right? Or articulate a brand new problem. It's much more often that what I come to do is gain more insight into the user need that I'm working on. So we don't want to think about this process as being so linear that you go through it once and then you have some solution and then you wipe your hands clean of it. The kinds of design problems, user needs that you are putting forward are career. You can work on them for a career. Okay. Now, so we stay in this phase. We recurse back to understand the problem more. Sometimes we reframe our how might we in light of some of these areas insights we learn. But what's different, or what design thinking offers, is a way for us to document and think intentionally about that iteration over time, share the story of our iteration over time, and have other people learn from that, but also gain a sense of efficacy for ourselves as teachers when you're facing the overwhelming task of doing the best you can do for the children or youth that you work with. It's helpful to know that you're making progress, to document that, to systematically recognize when something didn't go well, what we might consider a failure, that really we're learning from that failure. That's what design thinking offers. In this stage of our process, I want you to intentionally try your hand at that. I recognize that we can't go around and around in this space for a long period of time. I also don't want us to just quickly ask somebody about something and then go and create a big solution. What I'm asking you to do is, like my video, try something out, think about what you learned by trying it out, consider what your next steps might be, and then tell that story. So we're not, again, it's really important to know we're not rushing to some solution. We're not building a big unit plan. So what are we building? What are we creating to test in this prototyping phase? A prototype is, for me, I keep thinking about how it needs to be, the language in industry is often quick and cheap, right? How can we test the idea before we've invested so much time that it can't fail? Teachers are always strapped for time. If we spend a whole PD day building a unit, we're pot committed to it. We might iterate it a little bit within it, but we certainly, if we've built the assessment criteria, we've made an exemplar, we've created the tests that we're going to use, or the project description, or teachers just cannot afford then to scrap that day of work and do something different. So that's a trap. It doesn't mean we never create all those things, but we want to think about how we can start planning for student voice and planning to get insight about ideas before we commit a whole bunch of time to them. What does that look like? In my practice, formative assessment is often the vehicle by which I do that, intentional ways to get student insight and consider next steps. I often I do the project myself and learn a lot about it in the context of doing that. Before I've done the project myself, I usually talk to some of my trusted colleagues about it. Some of my peers who I've taught with over time understand my philosophy of teaching. I talk through the ideas, hear their feedback, think about where they think it might go wrong. When possible, I talk to my students about it. So sometimes I just sketch out the idea on a whiteboard. As this little design deep DT sheet here shows us, it's helpful to build an experience where we can actually get user feedback directly. Sometimes it's helpful to just make something tangible so you can think about it and feel it, and to maybe even share it with somebody and walk your idea through with them. Or it can be as simple as sketching it out. In the context of this assignment, what can you possibly do? I think there's lots of things. It would be great if you can, depending on, of course, everybody's is different. It'd be great if you could go into your school and try it out with your students. It'd be great if you could Skype into your classroom and have the teacher put a couple of kids come back to the teacher desk and talk to you about the idea. It would be great if you could send your partner teacher a pitch of your idea. If it's a lesson plan, maybe you want to build a lesson plan. Maybe that doesn't have to be as fleshed out as you would do to submit to your field supervisor. It might be more like the type of lesson plan that your teacher actually makes, your partner teacher actually makes. Perhaps you want to talk your idea through with a peer. It can be that simple. Perhaps you want to do more than one of these things. The key is that you want to have a way to start to explore the idea, think through it, consider it in light of user need, and then document the feedback you get back. I'm asking you to fill in a prototype plan. I don't know why I don't have it up here. Perhaps I do. The idea of this prototype plan, I don't have it up here for some reason. The idea of the prototype plan, important to it. I don't know why it's not there. I'm sorry. Important to the prototype plan is how are you going to, what are you going to pay attention to? What are you hoping to find out? How will you document that? Think through that. And if you do that systematically, any of the ideas that I've shared before can work for testing the idea. It could even be, perhaps you can test it with your own children if you have children, or some other context that you happen to be in. Sometimes testing ideas in an analogous context or even a different context is another way to think about it, depending on your situation. So you're going to, I hope that gives a bit of frame about prototypes. I hope what you hear me say is what's important to me is that you think through this stage of a process and consider what it means to you as a teacher. And you don't go overboard with creating something that you spend a whole bunch of time preparing to then implement, but rather you think about how you can receive feedback on an idea systematically, what you'll document, and how that can then inform what you do next. And you spend a lot of your thinking, like a scientist does, on, well, what's next? What are the questions this raises? What are the actions I could take? What more did I learn about this phenomenon by doing this? That's where the thinking should be. How do I get meaningful feedback? How do I open up to document feedback? And then what do I do with that is the focus of prototyping, especially in the context of our course. I hope that makes sense. You're going to submit it for feedback from me via email, and I'll let you know if you're not on, if I think you're not on the right track, or if there's something else I might suggest. I know that it has to be doable for you, so pick something doable, but also really try the process. I want you to audit this process and see what it can mean for you. And if you don't give it a college try, as they say, it won't give you a good sense of what it is that this can be and mean for you in your practice. Okay, talk to you soon. Let me know if you need clarity. Thanks.